Rich people of Reddit who married someone significantly poorer. What surprised you about their previous way of life? My SO said, "Today I made rent," meaning today I've earned enough/accumulated enough to pay the rent. And I realized that this is a monthly accomplishment to someone with no fixed income/salary. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. My husband grew up in a family where they were comfortable but on a strict budget. 6 kids and mom on disability. My family had no budget. One day we were at the grocery store and he always insists on walking up and down every aisle. I finally lost it because he was taking so long and asked him why he did it. Growing up, we could only spend $100 a week on groceries for all of us. I always had to put what I wanted back because we couldn't afford it. Now, I can afford whatever I want, so I like to look at everything I could have. Took him 10 years to tell me this. I felt like a terrible person. Story 3. I'm from the poorer family. Not super poor, but my in-laws have a stupid amount of money, so by comparison I'm very poor. But I think I can answer for her. We have 2 young kids, and my wife was shocked when I said we could look for clothes and toys for them at the local flea markets and garage sales. The idea had never occurred to her that we could save money by getting some gently used items. She had never been to a garage sale in her life. She has grown to love them, and now questions whether or not it is worth to buy any item new before running to Amazon or a store. Her parents think it's disgusting that we make our kids wear clothes that another child had before, but they don't pay my bills. Story 4. I didn't marry this woman, but when we started dating, she always wanted to chill at my place, never hers. Which was fine, but she also gained 35 pounds in just a few months of dating. She was 100 pounds when we started dating, and it's not really a bad thing. Just 1, I'm a chubby man, and 2, I was just glad she wasn't pregnant. Anyway, turns out her family couldn't afford dinner sometimes, so suddenly she had a place to eat every night and gorged herself. Story 5. Credit cards were avoided. For me, growing up, we were encouraged to get a credit card in our name and use it as much as possible in order to build credit. There was always money to pay it off each month, so it just made sense to build credit and collect airline miles or whatever the reward was back in the day. When we got together, she always used cash or a debit card. She had a credit card for emergencies, but avoided it otherwise. It took a long time for her to get over her aversion/skepticism. We were fortunate enough to have 2 good-paying jobs, though it also taught me a healthy appreciation for what it means to have a financial cushion. Story 6. I am not well off, but my stepfather is. I was raised by a single mom who spent money on everything and bills were always behind. She just couldn't manage her money at all. In her 50s, she met and married a multi-millionaire. We're in middle America, so that goes further than maybe in a lot of other areas. They have given themselves a budget of $10,000 a month to live on, living on interest, and they own their home. Anyway, once my mom met him and they got all her finances situated and paid off, she won't spend a penny. He spends like it's going out of style. He has actually begged me to take her shopping to get clothes and accessories. She won't do it. She spent more when she was a single mom with nothing. It makes no sense to me. At least buy a new outfit. She is hell-bent to not use a penny of his money. They barely even have any groceries. If they have anything, it's because he buys it for them. She is a retired nurse that gets a retirement and SS, but she won't spend anything. She lives poorer now than any other time in her life. This one is really strange. I can't think of why that would be the case other than trying to really overcompensate to not look like a gold digger. I don't know. I have not really heard a lot of cases of people getting their finances in order after they've come into money. Usually that just exacerbates the problem. Story 7. My partner and I are both poor, but different kinds of poor. She's never been homeless or not had enough to eat, while I have. She's extremely frugal and hates buying anything we don't need. I feel a desperate need to stock up if we have any extra money, and it's a fight for me to not fill our house with canned or dried goods, just in case we don't have enough money to buy food next month for some reason. It makes no sense, but my instinct is to hoard food because there was just never enough of it around growing up. Story 8. I'm not rich at all, but my husband came from a very poor Mexican village. He told me he used to shower outside because there was no in-house plumbing, and he uses leaves as toilet paper. I mean, there's poor, and then there's my husband's previous life poor. He's been living in the US for 12 years now, but when we first met, it was so interesting seeing life through his childlike eyes. Going to the cinema was a huge event for him. Heating up food in a microwave was a totally foreign concept. And staying at fancy hotels when we went on vacation was like, whoa. I still see him surprised by things now and then, and it just reminds me how much I take my middle-class status for granted. I feel like this is somewhat true at any level of wealth, though, taking everything for granted. And I don't even mean it in a snooty kind of way. It's just how perception is warped the more money that you grew up with or you've been around. because there really are certain things that people with more money have growing up that they feel like they couldn't possibly live without. And so them it feels like a basic need, whereas someone else would see it as a luxury. And as you have more money, I feel like just more things are considered basic needs when they are really luxuries. I don't know if that made sense thinking about it. I think it did. I'm going to move on. Story 9. I came from a relatively wealthy family. New money. My dad started his own business and grew up poor. And my wife came from a lower income blue-collar family. We got married out of college and neither made much money in the beginning. My biggest surprise was how she wanted to spend money. She was shocked when my mom bought her a $100 plus pair of jeans for her birthday. She couldn't wrap her mind around spending that much on jeans. But she wanted a motorcycle, for me, which I don't ride in the first place. And then a new furniture set, and then a new bed, and then a new car. She wasn't concerned about savings or retirement, and she never wanted my parents' money for any of it. We were both way too proud for that. It took a long time for her to come around to having an emergency savings account, focusing on debt and not needing the other stuff. She eventually realized that her parents wouldn't be in such a terrible situation if their spending habits weren't horrible. She still has it come out sometimes, though. We recently paid off my car, and she immediately thought I should get a new car. Story 10. One of my exes could pull in a lot of money, easily twice or 3 times what I could. He was so incredibly bad at saving this money, down to, say, setting himself up as a company to avoid paying higher rate of tax, but then paying a large amount each month to an accounting company to handle his taxes. Which he would do himself anyway because he didn't trust them to get it right. He would pay for taxes from one end of the city to another or hire cars rather than use public transport. Flights canceled, book new ones. Never bother to claim back on insurance. Buy a sports car, wreck it, sell it for scrap. He would work contracts and then take time off to work on his own startup, but then spend every weekend just going out and buying drugs and booze. I thought it was really fun and wild at first. Haha, money really means nothing to you. But when we became a long-term couple, I started feeling like his mother. Man, will you not just fill out the insurance paperwork? Story 11. It's the other way around for me. My fiancé comes from a 6-figure family. They have a beautiful home in the country on a very well-to-do road, 3 nice new cars, and they used to go on regular vacations when we were still in school. My single mom raised my sister and I alone in a crappy apartment. The only way we afforded anything was through hand-me-downs and government assistance. We weren't dirt poor, but I never bought anything new until I graduated college and moved out on my own. Anyway, throughout my relationship with my fiancé, we had a series of conversations where she realized her family's flashy lifestyle wasn't typical, and I realized how the other half lives. She was surprised to find I had never been camping in an RV or cabin, only tents. We didn't go out to eat except for very special occasions, and her family ate out every single weekend at nice restaurants in the area, which shocked me. For most gift-giving holidays, we got practical gifts and she got nice electronics. I could think of more, but you get the idea. Outside of little realizations, our financial backgrounds don't really affect us, because her family is liquid garbage who has disowned her. Long story there. And I love my family, but they live far enough away that I don't see them a ton. The most we get out of it is I make jokes about her marrying down. Since so many people have asked, I'll add a TLDR regarding my fiancé's disownment. My fiancé is very different from her family. She's heavier set, her mom has struggled with an eating disorder her whole life and hates overweight people, and worse, bisexual. And even worse than that, I'm a trans man, so her mom flipped her crap when we started dating. I don't think it was ever because my family is poor, though. She tried to scare my fiancé away from dating me, saying I'll tarnish her sterling reputation, and that she doesn't want to be one of those girls. The actual disowning was the final straw in a series of incidents that had been escalating for the past 3-ish years. The short version is, it was summer. My fiancé, then girlfriend, was home from college, and I happened to have a week off from my summer camp gig. She was working at a grocery store at the time, and her stepfather woke her up 2 hours before she had to be at work, screaming at her that she was lazy, fat, disgusting, slurs, just everything he knew would really hurt her. He followed her around the house, telling her she needed to get ready in 5 minutes so he could take her to work, or she was walking. Mind you, he, my fiancé, and her mom all had their own cars at this point, and it was like 7 a.m. and her job is at least 10 miles away. This turned into him screaming at her to get her crap and get out, so she called me and begged me to come get her. I couldn't drive, so my mom brought me. When I got there, she was in her work uniform in the driveway with a bundle of clothes in her arms. She was sobbing. Her stepfather had his hand raised but dropped it when we pulled in. I had to physically restrain my mom to keep her in the car because I knew if she left, there would be a brawl. Meanwhile, her mom stood on the porch, saying and doing nothing while this all happened. There's a lot more that went on, but I don't have the energy to type it all out because it happened a long time before we met, and is still in some way continuing. But it's been 3 years since then, and her mother still tries to tell her she's lying about what happened that day. But I know what I saw, and I reassure her that she's not making up being kicked out. She doesn't say anything about it, but she talks in her sleep, so I know she still has nightmares about what happened. So yeah, they're awful people and she's better without them. Money can't buy a family that loves you, I guess. Well, I feel like we got a little more than we bargained for with this one. OP just dumped a whole lot out there for us. I hope his fiancé is doing well now. I don't know what to say. That didn't really seem a whole lot like due to the money though, just bad parenting. No matter what the financial situation is, parents can always just suck. Story 12. My wife earned many times more than I did when I was a high school teacher back when we were dating. She sometimes would drive my 10-year-old primer black stick-shift Honda Civic that my cousin lent me until I could buy another car. She was blown away how aggressively mean people are to you when you drive an ugly old car. When she got out of the car, the spell lifted. I got a lot of respect from her for that. She seemed to think that I was a saint for not turning sour over it. I was constantly getting pulled over by cops and let go, targeted by road rage, and also pedestrians felt too comfortable engaging with me. I drive a newer Honda, 1-year-old now, and it is so different. I drive the same, but probably a bit more aggressively now that I can't hear the wind roaring by when I'm going over 40 miles per hour. I haven't been pulled over and haven't had a negative interaction on the road in a long time. Also, my wife now enjoys trading cars with me. Story 13. It doesn't directly relate to the amount of money they had, I don't think, but their place was always filthy. I mean dog crap everywhere. My SO lived with his mom sometimes, but would rotate between her and his father, and both places were this way. Dishes piled up, floors were grimy, the places stunk of dog pee and cigarette smoke. One time, I used the bathroom at one of his parents' places, and I had to spread my feet while sitting on the toilet to avoid stepping in period blood. I mean, it was so disgusting. My SO was baffled when, after we first got married and moved in with each other, every day he would come home to a generally, not perfect, spotless home. Now, on the flip side, I once dated a guy whose stepfather was a lawyer, so they lived a lavish lifestyle. The only thing that he was surprised about when it came to my lifestyle was that I did not eat pizza with a knife, fork, and a glass of wine. I don't care how much money you have, if you eat pizza with a knife and fork, that's kind of weird. Unless you have some really good reason to. I can't think of one, but I'm sure there's something out there that I'm forgetting that someone in the comments will be like, you forgot about this. But seriously, pizza with a knife and fork? Come on. Story 14. I grew up with a poor family. I was told credit cards were evil and to never get one by my parents. They had this outlook because they were never taught how to properly use them either. When I finally did have to establish credit and got my first one, I didn't overthink it and just followed the rules and paid it off every month. Then they allowed me to get more and more credit, more and more cards. An emotionally abusive ex would use my cards for everyday living, promising to pay them off with me. Soon the interest started to snowball, and before I knew it, I couldn't get out from under it. He ghosted me after 4 years of living together. I was on my own. For about a year, I would get home from work every day and just sob. I was depressed as hell. I met my current boyfriend in the midst of all this. I noticed him always using credit cards and talking about perks and points. He seemed so responsible in the way he used them. It took me a bit to open up to him about my debt because I was so embarrassed. And it got to the point I felt like there was a weight on my chest 24/7. The late calls, only paying the minimum on each card every month, barely touching the interest. When I finally opened up to him, he sat down with me and said, "We're a team. We'll figure this out together." He helped me go over all my interest and cards and see what the best option for me was. He offered to pay it all off with his work bonus that year and I pay him back, but we hadn't been together that long and I didn't love him for his money. I didn't even feel comfortable with him paying for dinner often. I knew I had to get out of it myself. One day when I saw him, he gave me an envelope and told me not to open it till I got home. He gifted me $1,000. I didn't want to accept it and felt horrible doing so. He told me he hoped it would help the burden, and I could do with it whatever I wanted, or even treat myself to something since I couldn't do that for so long. I asked him if he minded if I used it to pay a lawyer to file for bankruptcy. He said he would support me. I did end up filing. It was scary, but I've never made a better decision in my life. Felt like 1,000 pounds were lifted off my chest. Sounds like OP met a really nice guy with money. Because there's some oblivious people, maybe well-intentioned, but they're just like, oh, I'll just pay off your debt, it'll be fine. And OP's partner did suggest that, but also backed off when they were like, no, that's not what I want. The idea and importance of financial independence for people in the lower classes is just not understood a lot of the time by people in the higher classes. So it's really nice to see how empathetic and understanding OP's partner is. That's huge. Also, just a side note, if anyone is really struggling with debt and has options of people helping them, they do mean the best, even if they're not, so nice about it. Not saying you have to take it though. Do what you want. Story 15. I'm from a middle-class family, but my wife's parents are near billionaires, 0.001%. She was shocked about many things. 1. That I consider cost of food and groceries at all. They will go to gourmet food stores and spend over $1,000 and say things like, well, it's for food. We're ingesting this stuff, so it should be the best. 2. Booking non-first class airfare on any long trip would be considered cruel and unusual punishment to her. 3. No concerns about utilities, insurance premiums, no comparison shopping on routine things at all. 4. Every vacation is the finest you can imagine, oftentimes bordering on ridiculous, having so many upsells on packages and bespoke items that it's just wasteful. 5. No concept of debt and understanding how normal people live. 6. My wife was shocked when I save things that get wet or muddy. She would just want to throw things like clothes and fine items in the trash when they were just lightly bruised. We're very much in love and have shown each other a lot. She enjoys hanging with my salt-of-the-earth mom more than her own family at this point. And I like being spoiled here and there as well. It's a great mix. Story 16. My family is far from rich, but I grew up closer to the upper middle class realm and was making 3 times as much as my now husband when we met. He grew up extremely poor, and his family is still living that way. One big difference is how he's surprised that my parents will pick up the check when we go out to celebrate a birthday or graduation, and that my parents ask him to pick whatever restaurant he wants. Outside of the ritziest steakhouse in town, they don't care. To his family, a big meal out is going to McDonald's and not eating off of the dollar menu. I'm serious. Story 17. About to marry him. We met in college and my parents paid for everything while he had student loans and a part-time job to pay for everything else. If he was really hurting, his parents would transfer $40 into his account. But that was pretty rare and they would give him hell if he asked. He was always very anxious about spending money and never bought name brands. He would also buy essentials like toilet paper by 2 rolls at a time, 1 ply only. He didn't realize that buying so little every few days was wasting money rather than buying in bulk. When we booked our first vacation, cheap road trip to Georgia, he couldn't pay for anything and was worried the whole time. The anxiety that would keep him up at night made me so sad. He still never fills his gas tank up all the way, only $10 at a time, drives me nuts. But now we both have great full-time jobs and he rarely has any anxiety about it. He never has to worry about money anymore and is so much happier as a result. I always think about stuff like this when people say money can't buy happiness, although I don't actually know anyone who says that seriously anymore. Because it just quite simply can. Sure, past a certain point it becomes superfluous, and that's probably where the saying originated, but when your basic needs aren't being met, yeah, a little money probably helps keep you happier, if I had to guess. Story 18. This is a story my mom relayed to me. I wouldn't quite say that my dad is rich, he's a doctor, but compared to the family she grew up with, he is very wealthy. As a kid, my mom's idea of extravagance was buying gum at the movie theater. She had to pay her father back for this and he counted every penny. When she started dating my dad, he would take her to the convenience store for a Coke, those styrofoam cups of soda you fill up from the fountain. After they married, they continued to do this every week. She was shocked. To her, the idea of getting a soda was a rare treat. For Dad, it was nothing. Not even pocket change. To this day, 30 years later, Mom gets me a soda every week. Sometimes it's hard to see their love for each other, but these little rituals tell the story of their relationship. That is a super sweet one to end it on, I think. And that's not a pun with the soda, I'm so sorry. I wouldn't dare end with a pun. Anyway, thanks for watching.